credit default swaps, that is CDS. CDS is an arrangement between two parties. One of them is called protection buyer and other party is called protection seller. So we have a protection buyer all here who is basically an investor, and we have protection seller who is an expert person dealing with the risk. So it is an arrangement between two people, the protection buyer and protection seller. Now what type of arrangement it is? Under CDS, the protection seller, he provides protection to protection buyer for the amount if there is default which may arise on account of investment made by the protection buyer. So this protection buyer, the investor, he has made some investment in a reference asset. This reference asset may be loan, it may be bond. So he has made some investment in this asset, and it is possible that there is some default in future. So that default in future if arises, then he will suffer loss on that account, and to avoid that loss, to manage that loss, he goes to protection seller. He purchases protection from protection seller in return for a premium. So he pays some premium to the protection seller and he gets protection. So it is a sort of insurance. Now protection buyer, what he is doing? So protection buyer, he basically is swapping the future credit default risk with protection provided by the protection seller. So that risk he is swapping for that protection he is getting from protection seller. Now who is protection buyer? So this protection buyer basically is an investor. This investor may be a pension fund, maybe a mutual fund, or any person. Now he makes investment in different type of financial instruments. What instruments? So he may make investment in bonds, he may make investment in debentures, he may make investment in loans, and these investments carry different credit ratings and different degree of risk of default. So this person is making investment in reference assets which may be bonds, debentures, loans, and these reference assets carry different credit rating and there is different degree of risk of default. If investor is comfortable with the credit rating of the instrument or that of the originator, in that case he does not need any protection. But it is possible that he is not comfortable with the reference asset. In that case he will be requiring credit enhancement, and that credit enhancement will be by way of protection, and that protection will be provided by the protection seller, and for that he will be charging a premium, and that premium is called credit default spread. Now this premium is paid by the protection buyer out of the return which he is getting from this reference asset. So from this reference asset he is getting some return. Out of that return he is paying some amount to the protection seller, and in the process he is protected against risk of default. Now who is protection seller? Protection seller is an entity, an organization that has high credit rating, and this organization is expert in dealing with such instruments. So it sells protection to the protection buyers for default arising on account of investment by protection buyers. And protection for the protection seller, it is a non-fund based activity because this asset is not immediately transferred to protection seller. So for protection seller it is a non-fund based activity. But if occurrence happens, the occurrence of default event, if some default takes place, then it becomes a fund based activity. And for this protection, the protection seller is charging some fees, and that fees, as already I said, is called credit default spread. Now this protection seller will be providing protection to a very large number of protection buyers on the basis of his high credit rating. In case of default, which is called credit event, if some default happens, in that case what the protection seller would do? So the protection seller will pay to the protection buyer the cash, the amount of default. And protection buyer, what will he do? So protection buyer will transfer this reference asset to the protection seller. Now what constitutes a default? So what is the default event? So what is default? That is an issue which a protection buyer and protection seller will finalize at the time of making this agreement. So what constitutes a default? That is a trigger point, is a matter of contact between protection buyer and protection seller. Now this protection buyer, when he is covered against default risk on account of reference asset, but he is facing another risk that is called counterparty risk, because in case protection seller fails to meet his obligation, fails to pay the money to investor, that is protection buyer, in that case he is facing a counterparty risk. So in that case the loss has to be borne by the protection buyer despite the protection premium payment. So that is how the credit default swaps function. Thank you friends for watching this video.